Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like to welcome you to this session, which will focus on the topics that are dealing with new initiatives of Horizon Europe, that are the missions. My name is Philippe Froissart. I'm the head of the Future Urban and Mobility Systems in DG Research Innovation, and I will be the moderator of this session. I will be accompanied this morning by 4 speakers: Owen Kinney-Rance, Neville Reeve, Johannes Klumpers, and Harry Thunder, who will take turn to present the different topics that are covering some of the missions that have been identified in the work program 21-22. Now, how are we going to organize ourselves for this session? After a short introduction, the speakers will present their topics one after the other. The questions will then be asked at the end, where we will have about 10-12 minutes for question and answers. Questions, of course, can be asked via the Slido application. You saw the link and the reference for the Slido event that you need to use if you want to put your questions. And please do so at any time during the session. You don't wait for the end of the session to put your question. You can put it at any time, and we will collect those questions, and then we will distribute them to the speakers for them to answer these questions. I think the purpose of the info day is very clear to all of us. It's for you to get information that you need to prepare your proposal. So it's very important for you to ask questions. If you need some clarification, don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to formulate a question at any time on any subject. There is no such thing as a silly question. And we are here to provide some clarifications that you need to have if you want to prepare proposals and submit proposals in the calls that we will be presenting to you. So regarding the timing, we should stop the session at around 12 o'clock. If we are very efficient, of course, we will try to finish before, but since we have 4 speakers and each of them have about 10 minutes for their presentation, it's very unlikely that we will finish before 12. So I will make sure that we respect the time that is given to the speakers, and we still have, at the end of that session, enough time for question and answers. Now, what I would like to do is to move to the first presentation of this session with some background information that I would like to present to you. If I can have the next slide, please. So maybe a few words on what missions are in Horizon Europe and what are the mission areas in particular that were identified in Horizon Europe. There were 5 mission areas that have been identified when we launched Horizon Europe. And the purpose of those missions were to put on the table in Horizon Europe initiatives that were ambitious, bold, but realistic, with clear targets that were calling to the interest and the needs of the citizens. And it was very much linked to the mission Apollo that took place in the 1960s in the US, where there was a clear goal that was put forward and that drove investments in research innovation in a large scale to fulfill and meet this objective. The areas that were identified in Horizon Europe for those missions are the following: so adaptation to climate change, climate neutral and smart cities, healthy oceans, seas, coastal and inland waters, cancer, and finally soil health and food. Now, what is the situation as regards these missions? For each of those missions, a mission board was assembled, and they worked towards the preparation of a report that was submitted to the Commission at the end of last year. And it was decided that each of these missions should go into what is called the preparatory phase, to prepare an implementation plan that would translate the proposals of the mission board into concrete actions that would be implemented in the program of Horizon Europe in particular. So this is the situation we are in. And in the meantime, in parallel of this preparatory phase where the implementation plan was developed, we were asked to identify and prepare some specific activities that could be supported in the work program 21-22 to support the rapid launch, the rapid development and scaling up of the missions once we would get the decision to go ahead with the implementation of those missions. So the topics that will be presented to you today are very much those that were prepared during this preparatory phase to support the rapid scaling up of the missions. And now, if I can have the next slide, I will explain a little bit more what we are going to present to you in this session. There will be a number of topics that will be presented to you. There are topics that are of an horizontal nature, that will support the deployment of lighthouse demonstrators in the context of the new European Bauhaus initiative. There is a topic on transnational cooperation on the mission approach. These topics will be presented by Owen Kinierans and Neville Reeve. Then we have a specific topic that has been prepared for the climate adaptation mission. And this topic will be presented by my colleague Johannes Klumpers. And last but not least, there will be 2 CSA coordination support actions that have been prepared to support the launch of the cities mission. And these 2 topics will be presented to you by Harry Toinder. So I think that's all I wanted to say as a way of introduction. And now I'm very happy to give the floor to the first speaker of this session, who is Owen Kinierans, and who will make a presentation on the lighthouse demonstrators for the new European Bauhaus initiative. Owen, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you here with us today. And as Philippe said, I'm going to present briefly, as quickly as I can, on the coordination and support action that's part of the missions work program. And the title of the action is Deployment of New European Bauhaus Lighthouse Demonstrators in the Context of the Missions. So there's quite a lot going on there. And I think firstly, I'd just like to provide some context for what exactly the New European Bauhaus initiative is. So it's an initiative that aims to make the European Green Deal a cultural, positive, and tangible experience for Europeans. So as you're all very much aware, the European Green Deal encompasses an enormous body of work that's aimed at achieving climate neutrality by 2050, making the economy sustainable and resilient. And it's also about bringing all citizens along with us, making sure that no one is left behind. And then the New European Bauhaus is an effort to make this transition and transformation real for citizens by showing them the benefits of the twin green and digital transitions in their daily lives. And I think this is going to be done by connecting the Green Deal to our living spaces and to our built environment. So the New European Bauhaus is being launched in 3 separate phases. We've had the design phase, and this is still ongoing, where we're collecting ideas. There's different prizes for some existing examples. And now we're moving into the delivery phase, which is where this coordination and support action comes in. And as you're aware, as part of Horizon Europe, we're launching these 5 moonshot missions that aim to mobilize research and innovation. And just like the New European Bauhaus, the missions will engage directly with citizens and local communities and aim to inspire confidence in the way forward. So on this first slide here on the scope, you'll see the aim of the action is to contribute to both the missions and the New European Bauhaus initiative. And that's going to be done through supporting the launch of at least 5 pilot projects or lighthouse demonstrators. So these should act as demonstrators for future New European Bauhaus projects after the initial delivery phase of the Bauhaus initiative, as well as providing valuable lessons and knowledge to benefit the future deployment of the missions. So what is extremely important is the pilots must embody the 3 core principles of the New European Bauhaus. So these are sustainability, inclusiveness, and then what's termed aesthetics or quality of experience. So when we discuss sustainability, that considers topics such as circularity, materials, eco-design, this kind of thing. Inclusiveness is considering issues such as affordability and accessibility. And then quality of experience encompasses different things such as aesthetic beauty, comfort, functionality, and simplicity. And then the pilots, as they are linked to the missions, should also have a mission-oriented approach. So this, you're aware, is impactful, targeted, measurable. And then also, just like the missions, the pilots need to be ambitious and forward-looking, and we want them to be at the cutting edge and very innovative, and also developed through co-design with a wide and diverse range of stakeholders and citizens, considering different points of view and different disciplines, and taking into account the local needs and concerns, because each pilot should be in 5 different geographical areas within the EU, ideally. And then next slide, please. So with this coordination and support action for the Lighthouse demonstrators, we expect to launch at least 5 pilots. We want to see proposals and pilots that were developed through co-design and co-creation. And then therefore that naturally means that they need to be adapted to local needs and concerns, but that their best results and ideas, solutions, products, prototypes should be replicable. And ultimately, the pilots need to be symbolic of the broader New European Bauhaus movement, to instill confidence in citizens that this initiative is capable of bringing positive change to their daily lives. And I think while this initial 25 million will fund at least 5 pilots, it's expected that proposals should show further buy-in and support from other partners that will catalyze substantial further investment, both for these pilots and for launching further pilots and proposals. And the pilot should serve as test beds for the implementation of the Horizon Europe mission objectives and solutions. And I think there are links between the New European Bauhaus and all 5 of the missions. So if you consider there's the obvious link with the climate neutral and smart cities, you have even the link with climate adaptation, where you can look at things like nature-based solutions. On the oceans mission, you have areas such as sea level rise or flooding in cities particularly. The soil mission, you can consider things such as urban farming and urban greening. And the cancer mission as well can look at things such as energy poverty, just poverty, comfort of living, this kind of thing that all impact on our daily lives. And as I said, these pilots should deliver tangible and replicable results. The next slide, please. So as has been explained, this is a coordination and support action. It's 25 million, but it should catalyze further investment. The opening of the call is the 28th of September, 2021, so later this year. And the deadline for applications will be the 25th of January, 2022. And then we would expect to see the successful applicants around autumn, September 2022. And then the pilots will be launched after this phase. And I think I'll bring it to a close there just ahead of time, and I'm looking forward to your questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rohan. And indeed, we have already a number of questions that are related to the topic that you have presented. But as I said, we will collect the questions and we will only answer them towards the end of this session. So be prepared. There are already a few questions, incidentally, that you have already replied to, in my view, as regard in particular the scope of the Lighthouse demonstrators and the geographical coverage. Now it's time to move to the second speaker of that session, Neville Reeve, that will present to you the horizontal activity on the mission and the transnational cooperation of the mission on the mission approach. Neville, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to tell you about our missions approach. And just to kind of respond to the introduction which Philippe gave a moment ago, you have to understand that missions are not just about what we do through the Horizon Europe program. Missions are much more than research and innovation, and they're much more than what we just do, if you like, in Brussels. It's about constructing a portfolio approach. It's about recognizing there are huge amounts of potential contributions which come from beyond the Horizon Europe program. And we really need to tap into that. We need to provide the means to, I think a coordination is a very big word. I probably wouldn't use that, but we find the means to help align and exploit the potential contributions that can come from member states and associated states. And we already know that this missions idea, this concept, has huge support from these countries. And we see that from the events that which have been organized by these countries as we have developed our missions approach. There was an enormous level of engagement through national activities, which helped to refine and identify the missions which we've put forward. So we need to find the right mechanism which exploits that, that enthusiasm, channels it, and also, you know, perhaps to use a big model, we need to put in place elements of a governance which will really bring all of these things together. So this is what we have here. I mean, it's a rather small action. It doesn't rule out the fact that we actually come forward with further elements of this picture as we develop our next work program. So the expected impacts, quite simply, and as you see that on the first slide, if I could see that now, are to increase the commitments at institutional level in the member states and associated states. This is a long-term position to implement complementary actions, their own actions, in support of the missions. And of course, as part of that story, we're facilitating exchanges of ideas on knowledge and on how to achieve those mission goals and how to support them through these national, regional and local actions. So overall, you might say this is helping develop a range of different actors to be prepared to help develop and implement those missions. So more precisely, what is the sorts of things this network, and I'm talking about a core network here, what are the sorts of things that could do? And if you go to the second slide, please. So really it's about creating the means for alignment, coordination between these national, regional and local levels to help implement the missions. It's exchanging best practice. It's facilitating engagement at those levels. We've already seen that very effectively through the citizens engagement, which we organized for the missions work. But frankly, we need to put in place something which has some more permanence, which will really open those channels for the future. As part of this process, of course, you need to map who are the relevant stakeholders at those different levels, including civil society organizations, those key actors that can help implement the missions. And you need to implement a means to identify funding streams at those different levels, including private sector investments. And what are the right means to help mobilize the support, potential support for missions? One of the ideas which we've played with, and it's not yet fully formed, so some elements of the proposal which can kind of speculate on that future model, because of course we do depend on developments which will take place at the member state level, is what would be the right structures at the member state level involving the ministries, their own structures, to actually help support the missions implementation. And you might refer to those as hubs. We see, in fact, that level of discussion taking place already, how the different ministries can come together, how can they actually help coordinate a common position so far as these 5 missions. And as I've said, what we're heading towards really is a picture which I think will not be there right at the start, but it's something which will evolve as we get working on our missions approach, where you will see a governance model which brings together those different actors, and a multi-level governance model, if you might say, really to use a bit of jargon on this. So the consortium which would be appropriate to running this missions core network should include the sorts of organizations capable of coordinating at that national level primarily, but also perhaps providing the linkage through to the regional and the local level. So for example, ministries, national agencies, academia, and relevant regional and local actors. We've also put in the terms of, the text of the call, the fact that this network should anticipate certain events. We've given an example for one of which would be a kind of meet and monitor missions. It's really part of the whole story of saying that we need to keep in contact with citizens as the best, or one of the inputs to help, if you like, evaluate progress as we go forward and help set priorities. This doesn't have to be, we've kept it rather open. It doesn't have to be an annual event. It doesn't even have to be an event which is run in every country. Of course, it could be a single event, maybe run once or once or every other year, for example. But we have created the idea of an annual missions fair, an innovation fair, really gathering together stakeholders like the ERC, EIC, industry charities, the European Investment Bank, to meet and discuss mission-specific thematic areas. So really, this would all be part of the potential profile of what that core network does. As I say, bringing together the stakeholders, helping mobilize that strong support we have already, sharing experience, but really heading towards a potential future governance model which will allow us to engage with and exploit that strong support we see already as part of the profile, the portfolio of the missions which are going to be essential if we actually are successful. If we just have research and innovation only, we know that that will not be enough to achieve these goals. So this core net will be a, if you like, a key element in providing that channel, that means to exploit that strong support which we know is out there. I think that's all I have to say. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions which will come later on.
Thank you, Neville. That was very interesting indeed, and as you said, it's a very important topic to put forward, and indeed to have had the opportunity to include this topic in the first work program of Horizon Europe for launching the mission is essential, and will certainly contribute to the proper implementation of those initiatives. So I see I'm constantly monitoring the Slido, so we are getting a good list of questions. So that proves to be interesting to a lot of participants, the topics that we are presenting today in this session, and that's very comforting. The next speaker that I would like to call to take the floor is Johannes Klumpers. Johannes will present to you the topic on the climate adaptation mission that has been put forward in the Work Program 21. But before that, I believe we'll provide some background information and general information on the climate adaptation mission. Johannes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philip. Good morning to all. Can I have the slides? I don't see them, or do I have to change something for me to see them?
They are here.
Great. So I change to this. Okay. In this way, I don't see it. This is too small. How do I get that bigger? Oh, no, great, good. So ready to start. I'm trying to give you, before I go into the topic that is open in the current work program 21, I try to give you a little bit of context to the climate adaptation mission. The climate adaptation mission flows from a policy initiative in the Commission on climate adaptation, and that climate adaptation policy by the Commission, which is an adaptation strategy, which was adopted in spring this year, that has its own political history, policy history, and the most important element of this is the Paris Agreement, and the big United Nations climate conference in Paris in 2015, because it was at that conference that for the first time United Nations agreed on taking action on climate adaptation in addition to the climate mitigation actions. So the adaptation strategy is part of what we refer to as the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is actually a portfolio of actions of many different actions. Climate Pact is among them, and the EU Adaptation Strategy as well. So the strategy has a vision that by 2050, the EU will be a climate resilient society. fully adapted to those impacts that cannot be avoided anymore, even if we do the best efforts in terms of mitigation. And it is having 4 objectives: smarter adaptation, more systemic adaptation, faster adaptation, and stepping up international action for climate resilience. And the mission on climate adaptation actually has been developed at the same time as this adaptation strategy, I mean the concept for that mission. And thereby both the strategy uses the mission as one of the implementation vectors, and the mission has fully taken on board the goals of the EU adaptation strategy. So those 2 documents are totally developed in line and are complementary to each other. Next slide, please. The mission, next slide, please. Still in planning, I'm saying, I think Philip has introduced this in the beginning. We know now that the mission will go ahead, but the planning is not yet totally finalized, and more of this, and I guess Neville will talk about that, will come in September. But the mission as such has 3 big blocks. One is to prepare Europe for climate disruptions, helping Europe, the European Union, the regions, the citizens, communities, to better understand, prepare for, and manage climate risks. And we are talking here about all climate risks. So the most commonly known are heat waves, fires, drought, floods, storms, and also vector-borne diseases, for example, that are spreading more due to the other factors like the changing climate zones and so on. So that is one element that is, in principle, we hope that more or less all regions in Europe might benefit from certain actions under this, in this building block. Then the acceleration of the transition, this means basically that we will help regions to develop a vision, not only a vision, but also to develop actions and solutions in their respective area to adapt better to the risks that come through climate change. And the last objective is that we are aiming at demonstrators, demonstrating on the ground the possibilities to improve adaptation. Next slide, please. Now, the call, which is currently in the work program 2021, is right now the only one that relates in that work program to the climate adaptation mission, but it will not remain the only one. There will be later on coming an amendment to the work program, which will add additional actions that will also be for the climate adaptation mission. Now, this call is for a CSA, maximum €5 million, open 22nd of June, closure 14th of September. And the work program text also indicates that we are envisaging here a duration of 3 years. Next, please. This CSA has 3 major blocks, 3 major objectives. The action to be funded at the end shall address all of the 3. So the first one is better understanding climate risks, the solutions available to tackle those risks, and ways to achieve climate resilience. Establish approaches to involve citizen stakeholders to actually help bring them in to co-design, co-develop, and co-implement actions. And the last is the mapping and facilitating of synergies by identifying funding and financing opportunities for regions, for local authorities, so that they are better aware of RNI-related actions, and also beyond RNI in other programs, both in other European programs. So under these 3 elements, you have in the work program a couple of sub-elements for each of them. The work program text specifies that the proposers do not need to reply to all of these sub-elements, which is basically impossible for a CSA of €5 million. So there is a choice to be made. but each proposal shall contain actions in relation to those 3 objectives. So it's on the sub-level under these 3 objectives where the proposer can choose whether they take the first or the second or the third, but under all 3 of these objectives that are on that slide shall be covered by the proposal. And I think with that, I am at the end of my presentation. I'm looking forward to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Johannes, for this presentation. That's very clear, and I think it was very important also to put this activity in the context of the general context of what is done in climate adaptation in the Commission in the EU. Now we are moving towards the end of the presentations of the different speakers. We have one last speaker that will make the presentation on 2 topics specifically for the cities mission. And then we will have the Q&A session. So now I would like to invite Harry Tinder to come and make the presentation on the topics for the cities mission. Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. I will present you 2 coordinated and support actions in support of the cities mission. Both are 2 million, but I will go into that. The first CSA, so next slide, please. The first coordinated support action is to contribute to the setting up of national networks supporting cities in their transition to climate neutrality. So it's actually a complementary action to what Neville Rees has presented to you just before, which is basically the transnational cooperation in support of cities and the networks there. The reason is that the cities mission basically is a bottom-up approach where actually cities are being invited to express their interest to become climate neutral. And for the cities mission, it would be by 2030, the idea there. The other new element for the cities mission is that the citizens is really at the heart of the mission itself. The co-creation part is therefore very important. And basically it means that when cities come forward, they will have to be supported not only at local level about how do we do with governance and citizens engagement there, but also at regional level, how they could get support, and at national level as well, linked to their national energy and climate plans. So the coordinated support action is for setting up these dedicated networks for the cities mission. It is to help urban authorities, so the local authorities, to start thinking and basically reflecting about how they can go to climate neutrality, and especially then the one foreseen which in the mission, which is by 2030. And it's also to basically spread more the support, what is already there for cities, which is done by Joint Research Center as well, but also you have the CSIs, there is the Covenant of Mayors. There are many urban initiatives already, which look very often at climate neutrality, but mostly they look at sectoral approaches, like positive energy districts or smart mobility. And one of the other characteristics of the mission is that it should be a systemic approach, so cross-sectoral, which raises a number of issues with respect to governance, but also to see how, if we look at the deployment of these things, how funding and financing could be arranged there. So that's why at the end of this slide, it is basically to say that the proposal should take into account many of the national initiatives and hubs which are already available. Next slide, please. So the outcome would be that there is a mutual understanding and readiness between and local authorities, but also national regional ones, about how they could help cities to move forward to this climate transition. It would also help that because there are so many initiatives and also the urban agenda there, that there is a look about what kind of regulatory and other obstacles are there, like capacity building. The country-specific challenges should be addressed in terms of what are the financing opportunities, the governing structures which could be helped there. For example, there are examples of cities where basically the climate neutrality has been put into a separate kind of association where all stakeholders are involved. Anyway, there are many examples of these things there. It is to look at how the research innovation dimension could be involved there, which is to do with, as I said before, the citizen science initiative, but also the universities and other research and technology organizations, how they could be involved, and also the partnerships on the horizon Europe, like driving the urban transition, could be relevant there. And it is to define user requirements about how can you better use self-assessment toolkits about where are you at city level in terms of climate neutrality, and what would you need by regional and national authorities there. So this is for the first coordinated support action. As you see, it's a budget foreseen up to 2 million. The deadline is the 14th of September. Next slide, please. The other coordinated support action links to what Owen has been presented about the new European Bauhaus, but then basically how this would fit into the city's mission context. One of the elements of the city's mission is, as I said before, it's trying to have a bottom-up process, but also having a systemic approach where also citizens and other stakeholders are being involved from the very beginning about creating climate city contracts. So for the new European Bauhaus coordinated support action, this would basically trying to see at local level how to include these elements which already have been elaborated by Owen there, the sustainability, the quality of experience, and the inclusion elements there. And that basically means that it encourages cities to reach out to schools, universities, and the cultural arts environment there to see about what could happen in terms of climate neutrality, the changes to the urban morphology which is there, of quality and transformation there. And obviously it is to support the and promotion of the ideas of the new European Bauhaus. Next slide, please. So the outcome is, the expected outcome is that the citizens are more aware as well about the other dimensions which could be used when we try to go for climate neutrality at local level for urban spaces, for example, and do not see it only as a technical economic exercise, but also look at how to improve the quality of those urban spaces, how to have a transition to climate neutrality in a way that would not punish districts, citizens for accessibility, and also things which they could be proud of what they have achieved there. The aesthetic aspect is obviously very important there. So it should be also emphasized that it's a complementary action again, linked to specifically the city's mission, meaning really looking at local level with authorities how this could happen. But it should be complementary also for other actions. There will be many in the range of the new European Bauhaus. The next slide, please. So again, it's a coordinated support action. The contribution would be 2 million maximum. The deadline for the call is 14th of September. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry, for the presentation on these two topics. And first of all, I would like to thank and congratulate the speakers for having kept the time. So that means that we have now plenty of time, not plenty of time, we have enough time to go through the questions that we have received from Slido. And if we could have already the page on Slido, then you will see that we have a number of questions that have received a number of votes that are therefore in the priority list of Slido, and we should start. I was going to say we should start with the first one. We are not going to start with the first one. We are going to start with the second one, actually, because I think this is something that is of importance to everyone, which is the timeline for the launch of the mission. And maybe I can ask Neville to answer that question. When will the mission be announced? So with one word of caution, Neville, you are being recorded.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and thank you very much indeed for ensuring that I don't make a slip in describing this. Look, the situation is for those who have not followed the development of the missions, I think it's easily a little bit confusing, put it that way. I understand that. We began the whole thing 2 years ago with mission areas. We had mission boards who worked with us to develop proposals based on those broad mission areas for specific missions. We had those presentations of the mission boards now nearly a year ago in September 2020, and we presented those mission proposals, largely the work of the mission boards, but of course the proposals did come from the Commission, so obviously we looked at the advice they provided and worked on that, developed it further. We presented those, and a very high level group of commissioners basically said, look, this is great work. They supported this, gave us the green light to go forward, and you saw then those missions, to use the exact wording from the legislation identified in the Horizon Europe strategic plan. But they also said we need more information, and what's taken place since then is that detailed implementation plans have been prepared. These are internal documents. I think they will at some point become publishable. There's a lot of stuff there which relates to how the different parts of the Commission works together. It's not really information which would be of great interest to a wider public, but those plans will be shared. They're not at the moment. But very recently we've presented those plans, and I guess there's certainly very good news, is that they said across the whole group of commissioners, and frankly speaking, this work attracts the support and the interest almost of the entirety of the Commission services, the Directorates General involved. All of the commissioners who were at that meeting said, we really like this work, but they also needed a little bit more detail. So we're in this situation now where we're refining these implementation plans, and I think the way to put it is that we have very clear instructions. It's hard to imagine now that we cannot do what is necessary to refine those plans, and everything is scheduled for a full launch, assuming we do this, of the missions in September. In the meantime, we have also been given the political mandate to develop the work program on this. So you see, it's a bit like a train passing through multiple series of lights. We've had lots of orange lights. We can see the green light ahead of us. We're not yet quite at that green light, but it is very hard to imagine that we don't, by September, go straight through that green light, and then that will be the launch of all 5 missions. So we're in a good place.
Thank you, Neville. And to take the analogy of the train is still on track and has not stopped either. So it's also good to know, and we are confident that we'll be able to move forward in September with the launch of those missions. Indeed. Now let us move to the questions that have been put on Slido, and the first question that I see has received the most vote is the one that concerns the Bauhaus topic. So Owen, if you want to take that question, why is this a CSA while actually we refer to demonstrators and pilots? Any views on that?
Yes, thank you, Philippe, and thank you for the question. So I would say that we chose to use a coordination and support action taking into account a number of different factors and after exploring a few different options. But the one major reason for choosing a CSA is that it allows for the possibility to fund single beneficiaries. And then I would also say that the CSA will also allow for extensive dissemination and exploitation of the knowledge and research and innovation results that we gain through the pilots. And then just the final point I'd add is that the choice to implement this action as a CSA also received a positive opinion from the member states when we discussed with them. So I think that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. And indeed, this is a topic that was discussed at length with the PRAM committee, and I think the arguments that you put forward were also discussed and debated in the committee, and to the satisfaction of the national delegates. Now we move to the question. I can see that the order of priority has changed. I wanted to actually go to the third question. And ask Johannes to explain a little bit more the link between the Green Deal call activity and the preparatory action that has been identified under the climate adaptation mission. You want to reply to that question, Johannes?
Yes, thank you, Philip. The Green Deal call, which I think was the last call in Horizon 2020, was designed in a way that it would work. At that moment, it was not certain whether the missions would go ahead. So we could not take it for granted that there would be a mission on climate adaptation, although we of course believed in it that it would happen. And so the Green Deal call description was done in a way that in the event that the mission would go through, that these calls could be used in the context of the mission and could be considered part of the mission activities. And if the mission had not gone through, they would have been still good projects as a standalone without the mission context. So we know now that the mission will go ahead. Well, I'm not using exactly the same wording that Neville was using 5 minutes ago, but I'm not saying just to reassure everyone, I'm saying the same thing as Neville. So we will see in September how it will exactly announced and so on. But so what we are doing now is that we are planning for in the implementation plan for the mission that the Green Deal call projects and also that project from this first work program that we are discussing here today and the ones that come after, that they will work together in an added and a useful way. And this is also why you see quite clearly expressed in the call text of the current call, what we're talking about here today. You see expressed that the proposers are invited to make a proposal that is taking into account what the Green Deal projects are already offering. And by the way, not only the Green Deal projects, but there are also a number of other projects like the Climate Adapt initiative by the European Executive Agency, a number of initiatives by the JRC that need to be taken into account when that CSA is designed and proposed.
Thank you, Johannes, very clear. And maybe we can move to the Slido list again. And I'm not going to take the first question yet because it's a very general question. I will actually ask Owen to answer the second question. Should an European Bauhaus lighthouse demonstrators be established in only one city or in several cities from different member states? Do you have an answer to that?
I do. I'm happy to say I do. So I think the Bauhaus, the lighthouse demonstrator, is more than likely going to be established in one location. So whether that is a city or not, it's open to interpretation, because I would say the new European Bauhaus is not just about cities. It could also be in a rural or more remote or coastal region, anything like this. So it's not necessarily in a city, but yes, the demonstrator is more than likely going to be in one single location. But then I would also say the aim of the CSA is to have at least 5 pilots in 5 different locations. So maybe you would have a situation where a pilot would be spread across various cities, but I think more likely to be in one location. But ideally, we do want geographical balance. So this will be taken into account during the evaluation.
Thank you, Owen. Now we have a couple of questions that are of a general nature, and I might actually ask Neville to answer them again, and which is related to the calls. And the question is, who can apply for missions? Is it targeted at individual organizations, consortia? I think it depends very much on the type of topics that we are dealing with, but maybe there is a general answer that you would like to provide.
I think it is. I mean, it is really this kind of standard reply you would give, of course, to any other actions in the Horizon Europe program. It depends on the nature of the topics involved, and you know, as long as these are eligible organizations or individuals, then there is, you know, the rules for participation is what I would refer to here, and these are available online. There are, in our particular network, of course, we've emphasized the importance of institutions, academics, ministries that can have that, you know, that simply can be in the right position to achieve those opening of communication channels and that mobilizing effort which we're looking for.
I think, thank you, Neville. I think there are quite a number of questions that are related indeed to the composition of the consortium, and that probably are related to the topics that have been presented on the national networks, both from you, Neville, and from Harry as well. And there are a number of questions that that relate to the fact that there is still clarity and certainty as regard the composition of the consortium that should apply to this topic, whether or not, for instance, they should cater for the interest of all member states. So that means you would have, for instance, a very large consortium, or we could work with a more reduced consortium. And I think if I can have your views, maybe Harry, if you want to say a few words on the topic for the network of national contacts for the cities mission, and maybe Neville, you have also some views on your own regarding the network that you would like to support as a horizontal network for all 5 missions. So Harry, maybe first.
Thank you, Philippe. I think I saw also a question about 2 million, whether this would be enough for supporting all the member states.
Indeed.
So I think we should first clarify a little bit. These calls have been prepared in what is called preparatory phase. We had a budget a maximum of 5 million. So that's why there are very limited budgets available there. Then for the national hubs, it's not necessarily that you should have a national hub, meaning a hub per member state. It is that you provide a forum where each member state authorities, whether it be local, regional, or national ones, can find a place there. So I think it is really up to the proposer there to demonstrate that in the proposal for the CSA, they can reach out to all the member states, but not necessarily one per member state, because it's true that the 2 million in that sense is maybe very limited. We should still emphasize that it will build upon also this transnational network in support of missions in generic terms. But again, I don't think we would insist that you have one hub per member state. I think what we would insist on is that the proposal demonstrates that you reach out to all the member states in terms of support for the mission there. Thank you.
Thank you. Neville.
I see it as exactly the same as Harry. We were, because of the nature of this preparatory phase constrained to have a rather small action. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary to imagine that in every single member state you would have, or associated state, you would have a component, but you do need to provide that cover. You need to provide access. You need to reach out in some way. So a smart solution, maybe groups of countries catered for. So individuals which would cover a group of countries would be one approach. But it needs to provide that connection, and we do need to be able to say at the end of this that we have the means by which we are in contact with, engaging with the all those countries, potential countries involved in this work.
Thank you, Neville. Maybe what I can suggest is to the Slido moderator, KG, I don't know, to flag all the questions that are related to the composition of the consortium so that we can see the other questions. And the question that is on top is also related to the Bauhaus pilot topic, and the question will be to Owen. Should the NEB pilot address all the 5 missions or only 1 or 2? Trick question, for which I'm sure you have an answer.
Yes, it's a good question. Thank you for whoever sent it in. So the simple answer is that the pilot does not need to address all of the missions individually. It can focus on the links between the New European Bauhaus and one single mission. And I think the call text does not attempt to be exhaustive when it's outlining some of these links, because on a broad scale, it's Green Deal in general, because that's what the missions and the majority, the 4 of the 5 missions and also the Bauhaus are about. But I think it's worth noting, though, you know, they will all consider wider environmental and societal impacts. And there's also this clear focus on citizen participation, active citizen participation and engagement in both the Bauhaus and the mission. So I think that's one of the potential links there, for instance. And I think it's also, you know, for example, I could imagine a pilot where you look at an issue such as sea level rise that is relevant for the New European Bauhaus, because we have people living in cities that are going to be affected by this, and how can you make solutions that are both sustainable and inclusive of the broader community and also aesthetic. But then the sea level rise is also an issue that's in common between both the oceans mission and the climate adaptation mission, potentially even the soil mission. So I think the links there are numerous, but no, you do not need to focus on addressing all 5 missions in one single pilot.
Thank you, Owen. Maybe I can move on to a question to Johannes regarding climate adaptation. There is a question which is again about the scope of the topic. Is this call on supporting regions and local authorities to implement climate adaptation mission addressing regions and cities or other types of organization? Johannes.
Yes, actually, as the call specifies, it is regions and local authorities, local communities that shall benefit from the services that will be provided by the support structure to be set up. So it does not mean that the regions or local authorities need to be a member of the consortium, but they need to be the target group addressed, to be helped and to be assisted, addressed by the consortium.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking very much at the time, and I really see that we have only a couple of minutes left before the session comes to a close. So I suggest that we stop here the Q&A session. What will happen to those questions that we have not answered is the following. We will compile the list of questions, we will prepare answers, and our plan is to actually post them on the funding and tender portal. If you have a question that for which you require an explicit answer that is very specific, I would suggest you to go to the funding and tender portal, in any case, the participant portal, and put that question on the participant portal so that we can record it and provide you with an official answer in any case. So what I would like to do now is to thank the speakers for their presentation, to thank them for the answers that they have provided to the Q&A. That was very informative. very useful information that you have provided to the participants. I don't know exactly how many participants have logged in and were able to follow that session. But in any case, my last mission would be to the participants. If you are interested in submitting and preparing a proposal for the topics that have been presented to you today, don't restrict yourself to the information that has been presented to you in this info day. Go to the participant portal, go to the work program, and look at the work program and all the other related documents before preparing a proposal. So on this last note, it is 12 o'clock sharp. I would like to thank you very much for your participation, and thank you very much to the participants for their attention and their contribution. Thank you. Bye-bye.